"Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" Alice asked. The Cheshire Cat replied, "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to." In the high-stakes worlds of business and national security, the destination is often as obscured as the path. We are constantly forced to act within a vacuum of absolute uncertainty. The human brain is poorly evolved for this level of ambiguity. When faced with a total lack of clarity, our minds instinctively hunt for mental shortcuts, psychological anchors that offer a temporary sense of safety. Most of us rely on three specific anchors to ground our choices: the hard numbers of data, the authority of experts, and the comfort of majority consensus. These anchors provide the feeling of solid ground. However, the rest of this story will explore why blindly trusting them often leads directly into the very traps they are meant to avoid. Trusting empirical data feels objective. We assume that because the numbers are real, the relationship between cause and effect must be obvious. This trust leads to the most common analytical error, confusing correlation with causation. A visible trend often masks an unseen, intervening variable that is actually driving the outcome behind the scenes. This is a classic philosophical problem. In his Allegory of the Cave, Plato described prisoners who spend their lives watching shadows cast on a wall. Because they have never seen the objects themselves, they mistake these two-dimensional projections for the whole of reality. Data is inherently neutral. It only provides meaning when filtered through human interpretation, a process constantly warped by our own subjective blind spots. When the data is unclear, we look to our second anchor, authority. We defer to the professors, the veterans, and the visionaries, hoping their experience will insulate us from failure. Yet expertise offers no immunity to cognitive bias. Relying on a single leader's intuition is a gamble that risks compounding their personal errors across an entire organization. To test the predictive power of experts, economist Burton Malkiel proposed a now famous experiment involving a blindfolded monkey throwing darts at a newspaper's financial section. Malkiel found that the monkey's random dart throws produced a stock portfolio that performed as well as those curated by the world's top financial analysts. Handing your critical thinking over to an expert represents an abdication of individual responsibility. Real leadership requires a higher level of intellectual accountability than simply following a credentialed voice. This chart visualizes our third anchor, the wisdom of crowds. It assumes that if a massive majority agrees, the outliers must be wrong. But this collective wisdom is fragile. It frequently devolves into groupthink, where the desire for harmony overrides contradictory evidence. We see the consequences of this herd mentality in the stock market. Mass hysteria drives prices to impossible heights, creating bubbles that eventually devastate the very crowds that built them. History provides even darker examples of consensus. Entire educated societies have been known to unite behind destructive ideologies, proving that a crowd can be as foolish as it is large. Total agreement in a boardroom is a red flag. It suggests that critical thinking has been sacrificed for the sake of a comfortable, unified narrative. What happens when the data, the experts, and the crowd all fail at the exact same moment? The 1973 Yom Kippur War is a definitive study in systemic cognitive collapse. Despite clear warnings, the Israeli intelligence community was blindsided by the Egyptian military's Operation Badr. The intelligence was there, but the analysts were anchored. They saw repeated Egyptian military exercises and concluded they were seeing more of the same. They believed the future would be a perfect mirror of the past. This error was reinforced by the military's top experts and a political consensus that refused to hear anything else. They had built an echo chamber that was impenetrable to the truth. The 1973 catastrophe was a total failure of imagination. The Israeli High Command possessed the data. They lacked the mindset to see it clearly. If our standard anchors are deceptive, we need a new protocol for making choices under pressure. The starting point is a brutal honesty with oneself. Assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups. The Ipcha Mistabra, or devil's advocate method, begins by ruthlessly sorting every piece of intelligence. You must separate the absolute, undeniable facts from the assumptions you have built on top of them. Once those assumptions are isolated, you must attack them. Challenge their logic, invert them, and deliberately argue the opposite case until the weak points are exposed. True authority in high-stakes environments belongs to the leader who maps the exact boundaries of their own ignorance.